Have you ever wondered about working in a company without traditional managers? How about embracing a 4-day work week? Daniela Barroso from Nmbrs sheds light on these intriguing concepts and their impact on recruitment, performance management, and daily operations. She shares the challenges faced in implementing these initiatives and offers valuable recommendations for those considering a similar path. Meet Daniela Barroso. Daniela, thank you for accepting this invitation and for having the courage to be today on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I guess you have very interesting topics that I would like to not only to learn from you, but also to share with our viewers. Before we start, just as a short summary, what's happening in your life right now?
Good. Well, right now, you can see on my background, it's a bit of an empty house still. I just moved to a new house.
Mhm.
Work-wise, I'm currently working at Numbers, Dutch HR and payroll software. For almost 5 years. I joined when it was a pandemic. It's been 5 years since the pandemic already, and that's a bit what's going on at the moment.
Okay. So at Numbers, and it's visible on your profiles, you make mentions to very interesting things like no manager approach, 4 work days per week. Those are concepts that I've never experienced myself while working, and I've never seen implemented anywhere so far. Okay, so I thought that let's learn a little bit how these things work, if they are creating value for a company, if they are easy to implement or not, or if they are like a headache that everyone should avoid. Could be. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know yet. Okay. So let's start with the 4 days of work per week, Daniela. What inspired
Yeah.
your organization to consider implementing a 4 days work week?
Yeah, yeah. So as I told you, João, so Numbers is an HR and payroll software, um, in mostly in the Dutch and Swedish market, and our genesis is Dutch as well because our founder is Dutch. So this already tells a bit cultural wise that it's a bit of a different mindset from the traditional Portuguese work culture. What I mean by this is that they have a bit of a different forward thinking methodologies, let's say. So, for instance, the no managers that we're going to explore, we also have no managers at all, which is quite different from the Portuguese work culture, where we have a lot of structure and hierarchy. So what I mean with this is that we were always and we are always trying to innovate also in our own field, in the HR and payroll field. So we were listening about the 4-day work week concept already for some time, and we 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, we onboarded a new CPO, Chief People Officer,
Oh,
and she brought with her a lot of HR experience also in the US. And when she was back, she challenged us: what if we implement the 4-day work week at Numbers? So and the main drivers were so on one hand the fact that we are also an HR provider, so we want to be on top, let's say, of the wave, also teach by example. And the other key factor was employee well-being. We know currently we are at high stakes with employee burnouts, so this really helps mental health, and to have, and this is part of a bit of a Dutch culture, to have work-life balance. So it's not all about work, work, work. We work for a living. We don't live to work. Let's say. So that was one of the main factors: employee well-being, and also just also the future of work. The work model as we know it has been implemented more than 100 years ago, that we are working 5 days a week and we rest 2 days. But that was back when there was no technology nor anything like.
it's in report, right? In report times.
Exactly, like who invented that we work 5 and rest
I
2?
think there's a reason for that. I may be wrong, but I guess I've read somewhere that um, you need, in order for people to buy the things that you're making in your company, like producing automobiles, etc., you need to give people time for them to consume. If you're working 7 days
Mhm.
a week, you won't have time to consume products. So I guess that was the mindset behind that. You work for 5 days, and the other 2 days you just go and spend money buying my products or the products of my competitors, and the people that work for my competitors, they buy our products, something like that.
Yeah, interesting, but that actually connects with with also you can put it as an economic reason, which is
Yes,
then our employees have then 3 days
to spend more.
to focus as well, but to relieve a bit the pressure also of services. Like if you need to go to the doctor or to the bank, you always have to go on the same time slots, right, as everyone else, Monday to Friday.
Like during lunchtime, after work.
Exactly. First hour in the morning.
Yeah.
Then it also helps a bit relieve the social pressure, let's say, on services that you need to use. But especially what I was saying is that 100 years ago it could make sense to work 5 days, but if technology is here and we're working so much more efficient, faster, better, why do we keep working the same amount of hours and not less
Mhm.
if we are producing more as well? So it was a bit of all these combined factors, the social responsibility part of it also. If you have more time, you can visit your family, you can volunteer, you can pick up a training, you can also give back more to the community. So these were all the different factors that we saw that inspired us to do it.
Okay. So if I heard correctly, so besides giving more better life work balance to your team members, besides alleviating some of other stress, was there any other goal or challenges that you were hoping to address with this change?
So the goal itself was to really try this out and see if this works, if this could work for numbers, and how could we do it.
Mhm.
Uh, in a way, also to prove it that this is possible, that this is not a dream anymore. A lot of people say, "Oh, this is not happening soon in Portugal. This is so complex. It's a bit of a mindset thing." So, and we did it. It's implemented. We did it 2.5 years ago.
Wow,
Uh,
already
but
2 years ago.
already,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, we did it even before the government pilot. I think you've heard about our government making a 4-day work week pilot
Mhm.
country wise. We did it even before that.
Maybe the government heard your experience and decided to try national wide.
Well, they heard and they also invited us a bit as sponsors.
Ah,
Uh, like we were there in some sessions also to advise a bit and show to other companies in Portugal that this is possible. Give examples on how to do it. But I think here it's been very challenge. It's been not very challenging anymore. It was in the beginning, but of course this comes with a few challenges.
I'm sure there will be very interesting challenge for you to share as well. And I'm very curious about the KPIs that you used to measure the impact and of this initiative. But before going there, going back to the beginning, how did you design and roll out a plan for a 4 day work week?
Every year at Numbers, we do a company-wide hackathon.
Mhm,
So we put people together in different teams and they work in different topics.
mhm.
So one of the teams focused on designing the 4-day work week just as a scratch to start. So the first thing we did was we launched a survey to the whole organization with a few questions like how do they see this initiative in their own teams, what could they see could be a struggle, a challenge. So what I mean by this is that we involved the whole company in designing the 4-day work week. This was especially important because we don't have any managers, so we don't have any team leaders or anything. So teams are self-sufficient, self-managed. So people are the ones who know how to do their jobs and what they do in their jobs. So that's how we did it. We asked everyone to think on their own teams, on their own roles and responsibilities. Think about their schedule, their workload, what tools are they using, how could they be more efficient. So we came up with a set of standards per teams, per area, and we started designing from there. And we saw that we wanted to, for instance, to have 4 days of work, 8 hours, so Monday to Thursday. But we knew, for instance, that our clients, they are still working on a Friday.
Right.
So the company cannot stop on Friday.
Okay.
So there we talked with the support team, we involved them and asked them, what do you think? What should we do here? How do we want to address this? And they were the ones who suggested, okay, let's make shifts. We have minimum services on Friday. We start answering questions per chat instead of only by phone. So we made people think and be creative on their jobs, let's say. So that's how we did it. And next to that, we looked at, besides involving the employees, we looked at our own routines as a company, like the amount of time that we're spending in meetings. What kind of meetings do we have? What tools do we use? Can we be more efficient? We knew that we needed, if we're working less hours, we want to be as productive at least. So we did small changes. For instance, we are working in Portugal, Sweden, and in the Netherlands, right? So we have different time zones, different lunch hours. A small change that had a big impact is that we changed all the lunch hours to be the same in the 3 countries. So
Mhm.
we won an hour of work per day together, because before it was 2 hours where you couldn't work together because you were in different time zones.
Okay. Right.
So all those smart moves, that we looked at our calendar and saw where can we adjust to make it more efficient. And throughout the pilot, we did several, well, not a lot, but a few surveys. Like when we started mid of the pilot and more towards the end, to ask how people felt, if they saw an improvement in employee well-being, for instance, if they feel overwhelmed or not, how do they feel on a Thursday afternoon, on a Monday morning. So to measure all those, all the impact, let's say, throughout
Okay.
time.
Okay. It will be interesting to get to know more about those results. But uh, I guess we shall all assume that this was done without any kind of pay cut, correct, Daniela?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. In fact, no pay cut. Um, Everyone is working the same amount of hours, 32 hours. It actually came with an advantage to a few of our employees, because not in Portugal, but in the Netherlands, it's common that people don't work full time. So, for instance, we had already employees working for 32 hours or even 24. They are a lot more flexible in their work rules and the work methods they have. So what this meant was actually that they could work for less time but get a pay increase. Uh, because when they, for instance, an employee that was working 32 hours, they were not working full time. They were working part time.
Right.
So when we changed to 100% hours, the 40 to the 32, then this employee got a raise of
How
20%.
nice. How nice, huh? How nice for
Right?
them. Right. So, and then what were the KPIs that you used to measure at that time the impact of this initiative, and or you are still using today to measure it?
So we use different kind of KPIs. So of course we had the business ones. like the sales,
Mhm.
the sales targets, revenues, and so on. And then we had the more organizational ones, as in retention rate, sickness hours, for instance, engagement. We also measure with the monthly survey the engagement in our company, and we're still using and tracking those metrics. But it was mostly business wise, productivity and efficiency wise, and then organizational wise.
Okay. So, how did employees react when you announced the company was moving to a 4-day work week? What was the reaction?
They didn't believe it.
Did-
Didn't believe it.
There's a catch
We
here
were
somewhere. There must be a catch. Where's the catch?
exactly. We were at the summer event in 2022. We were with the whole company together in the summer event, and our CPO said it. What do you think if we would implement a 4-day work week? And everyone was silent.
Yeah, they were thinking if I react positively, maybe I'll get fired or something.
It was weird. Like no one said anything, but it was really because they were shocked, but of course in a nice way.
They
They
were like,
couldn't believe it. It was too good to to be true. But then, of course, everyone was super enthusiastic, incredible. They wanted to make it work. That was the best thing. Like, we want to make this happen. Let's do it. And just one small detail. So I told you about the KPIs. You could see, for instance, our ENPS score, our engagement score. The moment we announced that we were going to do this in the summer event, it already increased from, I think it was at the time 49 to 70, something like this. Like it grew really a lot, even before we implemented the pilot. So it was really amazing.
okay. And on the opposite direction, on did you encounter any resistance from other leadership besides the CPO or employees during this phase? And if so, how did you address it?
Yeah, good one. So within the company, as I told you, we have no manager, so there's not leadership per se. We are
Okay.
all leaders, of course, but then naturally, the teams need to look at their responsibilities. And indeed, for instance, the support team, they were concerned. They still need to work on Friday. Okay, maybe the engineering team can stop. Maybe they don't need to produce code on a Friday, but the support team can stop because if
Mhm.
something happens, someone needs to be there. But even engineering wise, if there's a bug, if there's a code, what we call a code red with one of our clients, there still needs to be someone in to fix that problem in the code. Um, so people were like, how are we going to do this? Because we need to be in. And we had to work with them to change their mindset. Okay, maybe we can adjust and have a few people working on a Friday and a few working not working then the next week on Monday, so you can still have a longer weekend. We did have a few employees that were concerned with how are we going to do this because we still need to be in for our clients, mostly the support teams. So they were concerned, like, okay, is this really true for the work week? Because we see that for a few of our colleagues, this might be true, but then it's not for us, could not be for us. So we had to work with them on creative strategies to make them see, no, you are also going to work only 4 days. We can divide the team, and a few of you are working on Friday, but then not on Monday. Then you can still have a longer weekend. So we did have to work on some fixed ideas because it's always how we've been working our whole lives. It's natural. So we really needed to dig and to explore with our employees how we could do things differently. Let's say.
And so, after these 2 years, what mechanisms are in place for collecting feedback from employees during and after this transition?
So during the pilot, so we did a 6 months pilot
6 months pilot.
back then in 2022. What we saw was that 6 months was not enough because you need to see like a whole cycle, a whole year cycle in the company,
Hmm.
because there's a few peaks in the year that only happen once a year, let's say.
Right.
So back then, we did, as I told you, we did a few surveys when we started, a little bit halfway. Then we decided to extend the pilot for another 6 months to make it a year. And we were constantly asking for feedback and changing things. The moment someone had an idea, okay, let's go for it. A new tool or a shift. If there's a bi-weekly meeting, let's make it monthly. What happens if we do it? We needed to experiment,
Right.
let's say. But then monthly, and we are still doing it monthly, we have a survey, an engagement survey, where we were asking, and we are still asking about how do they feel, like workload wise, for instance. Do they have the tools they need to do their jobs? So every month, this is an anonymous survey, 10 questions, quite simple, but that's how we keep track of what is going on in the company, and we collect feedback, and then we can act if something comes up more often, let's say.
And what is the trend that you see on those engagement survey answers? Do they keep consistent since the beginning? People are still happy, engaged, or have you seen something interesting going up or down throughout the years?
Funny thing is that we really noticed a huge increase in engagement,
In the beginning?
even before, in the beginning,
Hmm.
like from 50, 49, 50 to nearly 80.
EPS?
And it's the NPS, so
EPS.
from minus 100 to 100.
Hmm.
Kept see it increase to always above 80, or consistently above 80. And after some time, it stayed there. We're seen in we are part of the Visma group. We're seen in the Visma group as one of the top companies in engagement, because we're very consistent in our numbers,
Hmm.
let's say. And also, we saw, for instance, there's a question about workload. It's interesting, but in the beginning, that metric was not very positive. People were a bit overwhelmed in the beginning with workload. Like, they weren't used to work 4 days yet. They needed to do the same amount of work in 4 days. So in the beginning, this indicator were still, it didn't improve right away. People were a bit overwhelmed, but then through time, across time, then it started to improve naturally, and people are much happier with their workload
Hmm.
nowadays. So that's one indicator that it was curious to see how it went different from the other metrics that instantly improved.
Would it be realistic to expect, Daniela, that people just will get used to be on a 4-day work week, and in terms of engagement, that won't affect anymore the engagement, and it will drop to normal levels because they are just used to be on a 4-day per week?
Interesting question. I think this can happen.
But not yet.
Uh,
You haven't seen that. The needle has
no,
not gone down.
no, no, no. But there's also a big reason for that. It's because there aren't a lot of other companies in the market also working 4 days.
Hmm. Makes
So
sense.
what I mean by this is that the employees we have, they still value a lot that we have the 4-day work week,
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of competitors or other companies in the market doing the same. So they, like, if they have their own partners and friends working 5 days, that's already a reminder of how great it is that we are working only the 4 days.
Okay. Makes total sense.
But
Makes total sense.
I think the moment that more companies start doing it, maybe it will become, it's not a competitive advantage anymore. But that's going to take still a few years
Hmm.
to happen. But then eventually this might happen. Yeah.
For everyone listening, worldwide, Daniela, would you recommend the 4-day work week? Why?
What does my smile say? Definitely, definitely. I know that the 4-day work week looks a bit challenging, um, and companies are just so different. The segments, the kind of work that is produced worldwide. So, what I can say is that I recommend, but then be open to work on it and adjust it. I mean,
Mhm.
the methodology how we did it at Numbers worked for us, but it might not work for another company. If it's an industry company like a factory, maybe cannot stop on a Friday. They need to continue producing. So, but or maybe you can't do 4 days, 8 hours, but you can do 5 days, 6 hours. Just be open to experiment. That's my biggest advice. Don't just say no at first. No, we're not gonna do that.
You mentioned the example of a factory that may be risky to implement, but do you think this model, at least the model that you know, is scalable across industries and across organizational sizes?
I believe it is. But we need to prepare ourselves for that. What I mean by this is, for if you think about the health market, you see that there's already pressure there because we don't have enough professionals, right? And they need to do double shifts and so on. There's just not enough people to do the job. So the moment you would implement a 4-day work week model, immediately people can think, oh, if we don't have capacity now with 5 days, how we're going to do it if people are only working 4? So
Mhm.
I still believe this is possible, but we need to prepare for the future, like improve, increase the number of professionals of education. Like we need to prepare the world, let's say, to get there. But as it is now, I understand it can be quite challenging, especially for these sectors with
Right.
the lack of capacity.
So another interesting stuff that you already mentioned a little bit, but let's now go a little bit deeper. It's the no manager approach. So is this something that was also a project? Let's change and implement a no manager approach, or because of the Dutch culture or any other background, it was something that was naturally built in the organization?
So when the company started nearly 20 years ago, it had managers.
Okay. Hmm?
They were founded. We were founded in the Netherlands. So again, the work culture is already different, but the company had managers.
What changed?
I've been working in the company only for 5 years, so I'm not really familiar with how and when this change was done to have no managers. But I do know that the company in the beginning had managers.
Mm.
What I can tell you is that this is quite embedded in the Dutch culture, as in, for instance, even children at school, they are already challenged when their kids to choose their own academic courses. So the Dutch are very autonomous and flexible. So so there's still Dutch companies with managers, but I see it as a trend that the Dutch are more forward thinking here in leadership skills and how to manage their day-to-day lives. You can see it in the the system they have already little children deciding how to do their studies. So I think that came a bit from there, and also from the fact that we are a software company working with agile methodologies.
Mhm.
So teams are just self-steering and iterating and adjusting constantly. So that's, I think, slowly they started to realize, okay, let's go for this can work.
And how does that work in practice, Daniela? So on a let's call it a normal company, right? I report to someone. That person defines my performance goals. That person reports to someone that defines the performance goals, and this goes upwards until someone is reporting to a board or a CEO and cascading down everything from there. So if there is a no manager kind of environment, how does that work in practice, especially on performance review, for example?
Good one, good one. Well, we do have a single layer of managers, which is our CEO, our Chief People Officer, CPO, and our COO,
So C
Chief
level.
Operations Officer. So we do have the C-level. Then the rest of the company is flat,
How big is the company?
150.
150. Okay.
What happens is that a responsibility that you would think a manager would have, it's a bit shared across the different teams and the different people. In the performance case, in the performance area that you were just saying, we don't have a traditional goal setting, like you don't have a manager setting goals for yourself. But what happens is that you do it together with your team. What are the goals at team level and individual level? It's a lot focus on individual growth. Let's say, what do I want to achieve this year? And here, it's a bit of a different mindset, and it's a shift because you are used to having someone to tell you what do you have to work on and what do you have to achieve. And here is the reverse process. We have internal coaches, professional coaches. You sit down with the coach, and they help you reflect on your own on your own growth. What do you want to learn? What do you want to work on this year? You have to think, okay, my team wants to implement a strategy to do this. Okay, maybe I should get a training on that.
Okay.
So you are the one who have to come up with your own path, let's say. And this is a bit weird when most people hear it. And performance wise, just to tell you how we do it. So instead of having a top down approach, as in you have a manager reviewing you, we have a 360 review model. So each of us, we are reviewed by our own peers. It's 7 peers that review us, and then we also review our own peers.
Hmm.
And we really like this approach because, like, who better to say how you are performing than the people who are working with you on a day-to-day basis?
Close to you.
Not a manager that is there. The manager can know, but it's always based on feedback that they get from the peers around you.
Mhm.
So that's how we do it, for instance, at performance.
So from your feedback, it sounds it's a very step forward kind of mindset, which is something like, what do you propose yourself to do this year? Okay, and you need to be proactive in showing off, right? You need to say, hey, I want to achieve this, that, because if not, you will look like a low performer, using the traditional terms. So I like that, because people need to be
Yeah.
poked to, hey, let's pump those numbers or pump those projects. But at the same time, I'm gonna complicate this a little bit here, because I guess our viewers and listeners, they are thinking like, hey, that's too beautiful in theory, but in practice it doesn't work. So, for example, imagine the sales department. The sales are not going accordingly to what is expected. Who is the person, which normally would be a manager, right? Who is the person that slaps on the table and says, hey, what's happening here? You are not performing, you are not performing, you are not performing. You need to pump those numbers. You need to be like this person here, which is our top seller. So who is taking that part in a structure like yours?
Good question. So this is where it becomes challenging because you don't have this figure, this single person to do it. But every month, so we still report on numbers. So people themselves need to fill in, let's say, the monthly report, and they are able to see themselves that the targets, for instance, are not being met. But we still have the C level. They still they still design, let's say, the longer term strategy. So, and we have one thing that it's good to know is that we have internal committees. So the fact that you don't have managers doesn't mean that you don't have someone overseeing these topics. You have, for instance, a strategy committee. They meet, if I'm not mistaken, once a month to look at the numbers, and then you have in that strategy committee, like someone from sales, someone from tech, someone from marketing, to see what's happening and what can we do to improve those, to make those numbers go up. That's how we do it. We do it with a joint effort, and we have these different committees within the company, also for instance in the tech community, to tackle these issues that sometimes come up.
So those, someone from marketing, someone from sales, someone from finance, aren't those managers?
No.
So who are they?
They act, let's say, as team representatives, let's say, um, but they're not managers and they're not managing the team, and they can be any member from the team. The fact that they are there this month in that strategy committee, like in 6 months there can be another person from the team there.
Okay, it rotates
uh,
like a responsibility. It could rotate between the
Yeah,
team.
exactly. It doesn't mean that it's that person is a team leader. They are just a link to the area, let's say.
Makes sense. Okay, so another shared responsibility, which is one day you may be the one representing the team in this high level meeting. So you also need to be aware of whatever is happening, the performance of your peers, etc. And then what about recruitment? Normally, a manager is a person that has like the final decision on hiring someone for the team or not. How does that work?
So at Numbers, again, because we have no managers, we don't have a hiring manager. We have a hiring team.
Mhm.
If we need to recruit a new developer for a tech team, the team is the one aligning on what is the profile that we need in our own team. They look at their projects, uh, what are like, do they, what are the things they need to work on, let's say what skills do they need technical wise. Together with our recruitment team, they define, we have a kickoff and they define the profile. And what happens is that the recruitment team first, they do a cultural interview. And the cultural interview, why? Because not everyone can work in a company without managers. They need to be very proactive. They can't have this profile of waiting for someone to tell them what to do. We need people to be proactive, to have easy communication with other people, collaboration skills. So first, our recruitment team does this cultural fit assessment with ownership, leadership skills. And then the hiring team, meaning can be like 2 or 3 developers, they do the technical interview. And then out of the technical interview, we still have one last interview, usually by our C level, for instance. But in some cases, just with the technical interview from the developers, for instance, they decide who is joining their team. So again, this is not decided by someone above, let's say, but they are the ones, the teams are the ones deciding the profile and deciding among the candidates that they interview.
If half of this committee agrees on the candidate and the other half disagrees, so how do you untie that? You just simply don't hire the person?
There's been cases where we don't hire. If there's no alignment, then we don't hire.
Okay.
We decide to wait a bit more, or we've had cases maybe that we need to redo the profile, for instance. But it depends. If it's just one single person, and then the others agree, then we do it. We can also not be blocked, right? We build on consensus, of course, and on alignment,
Okay.
but we also need to get things going,
Okay.
let's say.
Makes
But we
sense.
do try to foster this.
Every recruitment is a recruitment, so it needs to be evaluated, the urgency and everything else. The number of candidates available in the market. For that cultural fit part that you mentioned, what kind of instruments or techniques do you use to assess proactiveness, the cultural fit, etc.? Is it like just interviews or do you use any interesting stuff?
We do a cultural interview,
Mhm.
as I told you, but we also use a very fun tool, which is called Eculture.
E-culture.
And Eculture, yeah. They they have a tool with games. They're neuroscientific games, and we usually send it to our candidates. So if you are ever part of a recruitment process at Numbers, you might receive a link to do 3 or 4 games, fun ones, and then out of that, the system will design a profile on, for instance, things as speed, accuracy, logic, so giving feedback. Uh, so we have this additional fun tool, but of course we know that it's not 100% scientific. That's why we still do the cultural interview, and that's the most important. But we do try to use these additional tools that are there in the market to mostly do an unbiased evaluation, because then you are not seeing the person, it's their own skills, they're doing the game at their own time, at their own pace, and you're not looking at their CV yet. You're just checking them on their skills, let's say.
Okay.
And then we do the cultural interview.
What role does HR play in a no manager environment?
All the roles.
So there's no manager to get the complaints, so everything goes to HR.
Yes, but it's challenging but very rewarding. As in, we play a very counseling role, advisor role, because HR is not there to solve your issues. Like in traditional companies, you have the managers and then you have the HR business partner. And then if the manager has a topic or has something going on in their teams, then they look for HR to solve it. Like, what should I do? And here you simply don't have that structure. And for instance, if an employee is underperforming in your own team, if a colleague of yours is underperforming, HR, how do we fix that? We can't do it at first. Like, if you have someone underperforming in your team, you need to take the responsibility to address your peer and give them feedback of what's going on. And here the role we play is a bit on advising and facilitating. People can come to us and then we can have a discussion. What is going on? What do you see? And then we can advise on, okay, maybe you can try this or that. And this is really different from a traditional company. Like, you don't have someone to solve your issues. You really need to take responsibility of what's going on around you. And this can be uncomfortable. But at first, we always try to help people to address and come up with solutions, because again, they are in the situation, they know what's going on better than HR, better than any manager.
Mhm.
And of course, if things don't work out, then things need to be escalated, and we go in with a plan and try to fix the situation. But at first, we always empower people to have a discussion and to come up with ideas and on how to solve it.
What advice would you give to some people in HR or leaders that are trying to implement this model in their company?
Just be open and listen. Um, Many times, even as HR professionals and managers, we just assume things. We only see part of the picture. We are not there in the moments that the discussions are happening. It's just not possible. Um, so just be open, just listen to what people are saying, and give them space, because most of the times they have the solutions for things that are coming up. We don't need to come up with a very fancy extra solution. Usually, the employees know what to do and what can be done. And sometimes they just need a bit of a nice push, give them space, time, room to do that. And they will feel very appreciated.
In general, what do you think are in your opinion, the three top skills that every HR professional should develop right now?
The HR professionals need to start developing, which is AI skills.
Mhm.
Not only HR, but other people. But I would say that's going to help a lot the HR function.
Mhm. What do you mean exactly by AI? Specific tool or
So AI is there, and it's slowly coming, like with ChatGPT, and we're using, for instance, Copilot from Microsoft,
right?
and it can help us a lot, efficiency-wise, um to deliver things with more quality. But it can also have a negative impact. So you need to be smart on how to use it, but I already see it in my day to day. For instance, if I need to start to design a new policy, sometimes you have that white page syndrome, like,
Where
where
to
do I
start?
start? Right. Right.
Right.
So you can just go to Copilot and say, okay, I want a draft of a policy for a
Whatever.
4-day work week.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't mean that you're going to do it as it's there, but you should be able to learn how it works and how you can start incorporating it, because it will improve a lot our own quality of work,
Yeah.
let's say. But that's a bit of a tech skill for HR people that I advise people to work on. But I think the main one is always empathy.
Mm.
This can sound a bit cheesy, but it's true. Like, if you have empathy for other people, if you are kind, that will bring other things, as in you will be open to listen to your employees, what is going on, and the moment you are open with them, they will also be likewise with you. So I think here, for a good HR professional, that's one of the main things if you want to work with people. Just have this empathy and kindness skills. On the other hand, you need to be business savvy, need to be smart. Like, where is the company going? What is the strategy? Because you cannot be all in just for the employees if then the company is not running, if the business is not running, right? So they influence each other. So develop definitely your employee skills, people skills, but also the business savviness. And then next to that, third one, the AI skills, a bit of a more tech skill for the
Okay.
future.
And what advice would you give to someone that is just starting their career in HR? Just starting.
Well, I started some time ago, so it's a bit of a different time. But I would just advise them to just be open to learn from everyone around you. Like, right now, if you think about it, you have different generations and different work methodologies in the workplace. What do I mean by this? 5 years ago, everyone was at the office. When you started a job, you were going to the office every day. In 5 years, things already changed. And now you have people entering the market who will never work fully at an office. So you have different generations working in your workplace, people who did it before and people who are just never going to do it. So just be open to learn from the different generations, let's say, and try to get a bit of everything to understand and also to shape the future. Things are going to continue changing. So that's my advice. Just be open and learn to learn.
Like being a sponge. I mentioned that in previous videos. I use the term being a sponge. Sponge absorb everything around them if it's a liquid. So you need to be a sponge.
Exactly.
Okay. What,
It's exactly that.
what about you, Daniela? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Well, that's a long period.
Hmm.
Um,
You could go crazy then.
but yeah, yeah. Uh, to be honest, I don't know.
Okay.
This can sound a bit scary, as in you have this question in all recruitment process. But I really don't have the goal of becoming like VP people or something like that. Now that I'm working in a company without managers, I see that it's a lot more about the meaningfulness of the work you do and how you help people and how you make them thrive, how you capacitate them and the business, rather than being like an area manager for I don't know, Latin countries or whatever, you know. So I know that in 10 years I want to be in a position where I want to continue to challenge, to empower people, to help them, to facilitate them. But I don't know exactly under which role, but that's what I want to continue doing.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. We are very close to the end now, and you may have seen in previous videos of this show. So I like to, in the end, challenge the guests to give me a name of a person that you think could be interesting to have on this show. Who should I invite for this podcast?
Rita Mendes,
Mhm,
she's from Alt Digital. I used to work with her at Numbers.
mhm.
She was the recruitment specialist when I joined. So, and Rita was the one who really sparked my interest in numbers in this no managers company. So I think she has a quite interesting view on things. She also has a psychology background and coaching background, and she has been helping a lot as well, like youngsters and so on, to enter the job market. So I think she would be a very interesting person to have.
Challenge accepted. And the last thing that I always make the guests go through is I'm going to present you two HR topics, and you are going to tell me which one is more important to you. Okay, so I drop the one that you do not choose, and I bring another one, and you tell me which one is more important. And we do that 5 or 6 times. And in theory, in the end, we'll have the area in HR that is the most important for you or that you consider the most important. Okay. Between talent acquisition and training and development.
Training and development.
Training and development and compensation and benefits.
Training and development.
Training and development and performance management.
This is getting tricky because besides developing yourself, you also need to be acknowledged and recognized, right? But I would still go for training and development.
Training and development and employee relations.
Employee relations.
Okay. Employee relations and workforce planning, HR analytics.
I think it needs to be workforce planning and HR analytics.
We're getting to big names. Let's see. So workforce planning and HR analytics versus diversity, equity, and inclusion.
These are all important.
All of them are important.
But
Yeah.
yeah, but I will still go for the workforce planning.
Okay. Workforce planning, HR analytics versus HR technology and systems.
Um, I will still go for workforce planning.
Workforce
Yeah.
planning. Last one. Workforce planning in HR analytics versus engagement and retention.
um, Engagement and retention.
Engagement and retention. So thank you, Daniela, for being part of this show. Daniela Barroso, engagement and retention above all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, João.
See you.